Hello and welcome to Emma's ESL English. So last week I mentioned that when we talk about British English, what do we actually mean? There's a very particular thing that might happen if you visit the UK. If you were to walk into a shop in Glasgow, it's very possible that someone might ask you, "You're right, hen? Are you all right, hen?" Which you might find a little surprising, not being a bird and everything. I'll put in the description a link to a story that the famous British actor Ian McKellen tells of whenever he returns to his hometown of Manchester, getting in a taxi and the taxi driver, no matter if it's male or female, the taxi driver asking him, "Where are you going, love?" These regional terms of endearment for strangers are dying out now, but they can still be heard around the UK. And they're not really connected to particular cities, but rather whole areas of the UK. And often these terms can overlap. So within the same county, you might hear more than one term being used. Some terms are especially strong still in countryside areas, whereas others have remained prevalent in particular city areas, just because each generation continues to use them. One thing that is slowly changing, though, is the kind of terms being used, especially as they refer to women. For a lot of women, they find these terms offensive. They feel that they are kind of a condescending way to refer to women. In fact, a lot of these terms also have male variants, just the same as that Ian McKellen story, "Where you go in love?" Love is being applied to male and female in the same way. A lot of women receive these terms of endearment for strangers differently because we are often being condescended to. So I think that's perhaps one reason they're starting to be less common, because women are choosing not to use them themselves. But also I think a lot of it is about movement. Historically, our parents moved away from their hometowns, and we have also continued to move in our working lives. So I think the attachment to these words has loosened as people have left and had different experiences. Anyway, what kind of words are we talking about? Many of the words that we use as these regional terms of endearment for strangers are very common words in English, but they're perhaps not words that you would consider using to talk to a person with. For example, in Newcastle and the Northeast, you might be called flower or pet. In Somerset, they famously use lover. They will use lover for everybody. That's not actually just for the lover. My friend from the Midlands often uses Chuck to reply to me. "How you doing, Chuck?" In Liverpool, you might be called queen. In Yorkshire, it's very common to hear duck or doll, but you might also hear love or flower, depending on where you are. Yorkshire is a very big county, so it could be different places. You hear different things. And this could be the same as in Glasgow. They might say, "You all right, duck? You all right, hen?" If you think about all of these kind of service industry situations, that's when you're most likely to hear them. So in restaurants, in shops, whenever you're in a taxi, perhaps if you're buying tickets at the train station, those kind of scenarios, you're most likely to hear these words. So it'll be things like, "What can I get you, pet?" Or "You need any help, love?" Or "That'll be £2.50, flower." For example, in Wales, you might be called mush. Welsh has a few different options, actually. A lot of them are actually Welsh words, so they don't really translate very well to English. So we have some words that could be considered connected. For example, flower and petal. You're right, petal. Then we also have ones related to chickens. So chick, cock for men, that one did not age well, and hen are all very common. The most common term, which definitely is growing and more commonly used widely across the UK, is mate. It's really, really common for people to refer to their friends and also strangers as mate. "You all right, mate? Can I get you anything, mate?" That's really, really common across the UK. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, to male or female. It will still be used the same way. The important thing to remember with all of these many, many words is that you are not expected to use them. For a start, there is no way that you can know what is going to be the main term used wherever you're traveling, because it really can be extremely local. So you do not have to use them. It will mostly be used by the person in the service job talking to you as the customer. So you possibly will hear them, but you don't need to use them back again to that person. So that's the main thing to bear in mind. It's just something really I thought you might be interested in, because it's a little bit weird and it doesn't really fit in with a lot of our British need for politeness. It doesn't really work for that. Now, America doesn't really have this at all. When I was living and working out of America, most of the time, if I was in a shop or in a restaurant or something, people would refer to me as ma'am or ma'am. Even though at that time, like, we're going back to my early 20s. So I was not looking in any way like an olderish kind of a lady. They were still very much would refer to me as ma'am and sir. Sir and ma'am are the most common ones that you'll hear right across America. But across the UK, mom is for the Queen. So nobody's going to call you mom here. So sorry, it's not going to happen. Sir, yes, it's possible they'll call you sir. They are more likely to call you miss than mom. So if you're a younger woman, they definitely will call you miss. Some people might call you lady. In fact, it doesn't really matter. I know that some women get quite upset about being called love, and I can understand that because it seems like a very close term of endearment, actually. And if you have especially a creepy dude who's calling you, all right, love, which definitely happens, I can understand why for a lot of women that's really made them not like this kind of term at all. But in general, just do bear in mind, nobody's trying to be rude. Nobody's trying to make you feel uncomfortable. This is literally a very common term that they probably use hundreds of times a day. They're just treating you as another member of the society. So in fact, you could see it as more of a welcoming word, because if they're using this with you, then they're lumping you in with the rest of us British people. So anyway, I hope that's interesting. And next week, we will be talking about dialect words in English. Like and subscribe if you found this useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.